Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to do a drawing of Kobe Bryant and I'm going to use colored pencils on sandpaper. Let's start. So the colored pencils I'm using are Faber-Castell Polychromos colored pencils, and the surface I'm going to be working on is 1000 grit wet dry sandpaper. So it's regular sandpaper that you can buy in a hardware store. I started with a black colored pencil and I started shading a part of the background here to the left and above his head. And the idea is to create contrast with the lighter parts of his body. Now the reference will be included in the description if you want to check it out, and you will see that I made some changes to it. But I decided to make the background a little bit darker, and I don't want it completely black, which is why I started adding some of these lighter and more vibrant colors in there in order to create a bit of variation both in terms of value and color. I want to make it look like the scene takes place in a game and there are some suggestions of shapes and lights in the background, like maybe there are some shapes that you can see in the back, like the spectators, lights and things like that. So I did a bit of blending and then a bit of layering on top of that, experimenting with a number of different colors. But as for the blending tools, I like to use a variety of blending tools. I use homemade tortillons, I sometimes even use my finger, and also brushes work pretty well on this surface, even though the sanded surface tends to wear them down a little bit. So after that I started working on the face, and one of the things I like about this surface is that you can easily layer lighter pencils on top of the darker ones, which means that I can add these tiny light details, and I don't have to do any erasing, I don't have to do any planning where I'm gonna put lighter details, where I'm going to put darker details. I can just go in and work from dark to light or light to dark, whatever I feel like it. And this also has a number of other advantages, because as you can see here on the forehead and the top of the head area, I'm layering a couple of different browns, a bit of ochre, and then some lighter, putting in some lighter details on top of that. The thing is that I can put the base color down first and then slowly add or gently add on top of that, allowing the top layer to be influenced by the layer underneath. Or I can make very clean marks where I can create details with a clean edge to value if I want to do so. So if I want to make an area just a little bit lighter or a little bit different color, I can just kind of graze my pencil on top of that and modify the color. And if I want to create like a clearer, more definite detail, I can do that as well with a sharp pencil. Like on the top of the head, there are a lot of these drops of sweat which are glistening because of the lights above. And I can easily put those in, but I'm not going to use a white colored pencil for this. I am actually using the ivory colored pencil. It's very close to white, but it's a bit warmer, just a tiny bit darker. It's kind of like a yellowish white, I suppose, but it's very close to a white colored pencil, and I think you can barely tell the difference here. But I think it goes well with some of these other colors that I put down first. And like I said, because I'm able to work from dark to light, and because I'm able to add these tiny details on this sanded surface, it's easy for me to achieve this effect of a sweaty top of the head, with those drops of sweat glistening on the top of the head and reflecting the light from the light source above. Moving on to the other eye, moving on to the rest of the face, and just doing the usual thing where I lay down the base color first and then add some lighter and darker details on top. So as you can see here, for the most part I worked with burnt ochre as my base color, which is like a yellowish brown. So I wanted this warmer brownish color, and then on top of that I worked with that ivory colored pencil, because there's a lot of contrast here because, between those lighter glistening parts of the face and the darker ones which are in the shadow. That's because of the nature of the lighting. And then on top of that I would also add some darker details, occasionally using either a walnut brown or a burnt sienna or something like that. Working on the teeth now. Those are going to appear almost white because there's a lot of contrast here. But of course I'm going to add some other details to the mouth and the teeth a bit later. As for the nose, this the side of the nose to the left is going to remain a little bit darker, but the nostril here, or at least the top part of it, is reflecting a bit of light. Also the tip of the nose, again, it needs to be lighter because it's somewhat round and reflecting a bit of light as well. And I'm putting all of these lighter details with an ivory colored pencil. On regular paper this would be impossible. I wouldn't be able to work like this. I would have to go from light to dark, and I would have to reserve the areas of lighter value and work around them, and maybe try to do a little bit of work by erasing. Other than that, I don't really know how I could accomplish such tiny lighter details, at least on regular paper. On this surface you can put layer after layer. I don't really know how many layers you can put down, but you can put quite a few. And I prefer the 1000 grit sandpaper because it's not too rough, so you can the coloring of slightly larger areas is maybe a little bit easier. And on this surface, if you try it out, you will find that colored pencils behave a little bit more like pastel pencils than they do like colored pencils. So it's a completely different experience. There are some challenges as well. Of course, you are limited when you buy this type of sandpaper. You're limited in terms of the number of the size of the paper, as well as the color, the background color of the paper. Here I'm using just kind of like a mid-tone gray. But you know, you can work with that. This darker background allows you to create some shadows naturally and very quickly, and to create some interesting looking textures as well. So there's that. Moving on to the neck area, trying to establish some base colors there. Here they will be a little bit darker. And then adding some of the lighter details on his jersey. Now as for these purplish details, I used a couple of different colors for that, but honestly I don't really write down the numbers of the pencils I use. I know that sometimes people ask me about those, but I can't really be bothered to write all of that down, and usually I don't really care about achieving the exact same color. I try to approximate, and also a lot of people will be using different brands, so if I tell them that I'm using this or that specific color in the Faber-Castell range, it really won't mean much to them. I added some lighter details using the white colored pencil, and then some darker details using black colored pencil. Now we're going to need to talk about that a little bit, but I'm going to say a few words on that a bit later. Anyway, as for the blending, again I used a bit of that tortillon to blend that in, and now I'm going to do a little bit more work on the ear just to finish that part of the face, even though the face is not nearly done, and I'm going to be making adjustments to it throughout the course of the video, obviously. Adding a little bit more shadow on the neck, and then shading a little bit more of the background to the right of the head. So that's the thing about these photos taken in-game or on court. The light source can be a little bit confusing. There can be all kinds of reflections, lights coming from different directions, but generally speaking the light is coming from above. So the top of the head is going to be the lightest part, along with some other areas. Just adding some smaller details to the face and the neck area, trying to refine that a little bit. The likeness is close but not quite there yet. Like I said, I will be making some minor adjustments throughout the course of the video. I know I've been doing a ton of landscapes on my channel, but every now and then I like to do a portrait. So this is not exactly a portrait because we see a little bit more of his body, but capturing the likeness of the person is still a fairly important part of a drawing like this. Moving on to the shoulder and the right arm area, because it's to the left but it's his right. Again, I put down a little bit of ochre first, and then I worked on top of that with some burnt sienna and a little bit of black colored pencil for the shadow areas, like around the armpits and that area between the arms and the jersey where there is very little light coming through. And here on the top of the shoulder, obviously that part of the body is going to be reflecting a lot of light because it's facing the light source and because he's sweaty, obviously. So I'm going to be adding some more of those glistening reflective details, and I'm going to be doing a bit more blending with tortillons and other tools. There are some tiny glistening details here as well. Again, some sweaty details, and I'm putting those in again using the ivory colored pencil. Again, putting in those tiny details because it's easy for me to layer lighter details on top of the dark ones. I skipped ahead a little bit. I have done most of the tattoo here, and now I'm going to do a little bit more work on the jersey. First I'm going to draw the outline here with a white colored pencil, and then I'm going to work with a yellow or a couple of different yellow colored pencils. So it's a Lakers jersey. I'm going to try to get the colors to look close to the original, I suppose. And I'm working mostly in freehand, so some parts of it will be a little bit irregular, but I hope that it will still look decent. When I said I'm working in freehand now, but I created the original or the initial sketch or the outline by using the transfer method. I used tracing and transfer using charcoal to get that initial sketch, and then of course I proceeded to work on top of that with colored pencils. Now let me say a few words about using the black colored pencil first. Black colored pencil now. The first thing I want to say is that in addition to the Faber-Castell Polychromos black colored pencil, I also like to use the Kohinoor Silky Black pencil, which is a bit darker and feels a little bit more like charcoal. You could of course get away with using just one, but I like to use both. Now, another thing that I wanted to say, which is a bit more important I suppose, is that often you will see that colored pencil artists shy away or don't recommend using colored pencil to shade, black colored pencil, sorry, to shade some of the darker areas. I actually like using it this way, especially on this surface, because I find it's very easy to get something to look darker simply by using a black colored pencil, because on regular paper you can't really blend colored pencils, you sort of layer them to create a certain effect. On this surface, on the other hand, because this rough textured surface grinds on your pencil, the colors actually do blend. So what I can do here, and that's what I'm doing right now, is I can put in those shadow areas or indications of those shadow areas first, and then I can just work on top of them, putting some lighter layers, and I can create fairly seamless transitions from areas of lighter color to areas of darker color. And I can just go over that black color with a bit of this purple here, and it becomes like a really dark purple. It works on this surface. On regular paper, I don't know if I would recommend this approach, but here it actually works like a charm. That's one of the things that I really like about this paper. So it's going to make my job a lot easier with this jersey. I'm essentially just going to work on top of that with a layer of purple, and I'm always going to put down the black colored pencil first to create those darker or shadow areas. Now for the yellow parts of the jersey, I used a combination of a couple of different yellows, because depending on the lighting and how much it's exposed to the light source, the yellow is going to be a little bit different, maybe a little bit darker, in some places a little bit lighter in others. And you can see here I'm going over those black areas with this purple and making a nice transition from those lighter purplish areas onto the darker ones. The position of the other arm was slightly different initially, but I changed it a bit later, as you will see, because I wanted him to be dribbling a ball, and I wanted the other arm to be a little bit further behind. So here I'm adding some details to the hand that's dribbling the ball. First adding those darker areas using the black colored pencil and the brown, and then working on top of that with the ochre, and then adding even lighter details on top with an ivory colored pencil. So this approach gives me a nice range of value to explain the shape of this complex part of the body to the viewer. I'm going to move on to the shoulder, and because shoulders are round and the top part is facing the light source, they're also going to be reflecting a bit of that light. I just need to decide how to create contrast between the shoulder and the background. So at the bottom you can see that I simplified things a little bit, and now I'm just going to keep shading the arm using a similar approach of layering different a few different colors. I sometimes do a little bit of blending with Tortillon or some other tool, but on this surface another way to blend is simply to layer one pencil on top of the other, and that kind of fills in the gaps and removes the ugly textures. So I'm going back and forth by adding some lighter details and darker details. And one of the things I've noticed is that if you go in immediately with some very light details, it's very difficult to put darker colors on top of them. So you need to be careful with that. Even on a surface like this that can take many layers. The drawing here is almost done. I'm going to put my signature in the lower right corner, and I used a white color pencil for that. Just going to finish these corners where the drawing was secured with a tape, and that's it. This is what the finished drawing looks like. I made some adjustments to the face, and I hope you like it. Don't forget to check out my other videos, and if you want to see more content and longer videos, check out my Patreon. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.